Okay. I was on the other side. Thank you very much. Очень далеко. Sorry? Hindi? Yeah, she's in India. She's in, actually she's in Kurukshetra today. Yeah, driving. 7 buses, mainly Russians. I think 80-90% are Russians on the parikrama. In modern ISKCON temples, it's women on one side and men on the other side. This was like in the 80s and 90s. Women were behind. Maybe.
Mother, yeah,
it's okay. Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Yashodanandana Vraja Jana Ranjana Yashodanandana Vraja Jana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanacharya Yamuna Tira Vanacharya Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Yashodanandana Vraja Jana Ranjana Yashodanandana Vraja Jana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanacharya Yamuna Tira Vanacharya Jaya Radha Madhava Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Yashodanandana Vraja Jana Ranjana Yashodanandana Vraja Jana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jai Vishnupad Pram Sibrivir Kasharya Sutara Sata A.C. Bhaktivedanta Goswami Maharaj Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jai Vishnupad Pram Sibrivir Kasharya Sutara Sata Srila Bhaktivedanta Goswami Maharaj Prabhupada Ki Jai. Anantakoti Vaishnavrinda Ki Jai. All glories and devotees, all glories and devotees, all glories and devotees, all glories to Shri Shri Guru and Gauranga. Namo Vishnupad. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
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 So today is Ekadashi. It's today, isn't it? Yeah. It's Sunday. Rama Ekadashi. So I was actually prepared. I prepared to speak a little bit, speak about Ekadashi, but somehow, because next weekend we have Govardhan Puja, so I'll be speaking Isopanisad. So skipping Isopanisad. So today we take Isopanisad, verse number 8, mantra number 8. Okay. So you have the text, somebody? No.
Can you use phones?
Yeah, but not everybody has the phone. Tuva, can you get it?
Yep.
Kameshwari, you can get it on your phone? You go to Veda base. Veda base.
What verse?
Mantra number 8. Okay? Sa Paryagach
Paryagach
Shukram
Shukram
Akayam
Akayam
Vranam
Avanam
Ashnaviram
Ashnaviram
Shudham
Shudham
Papavidham
Papavidham
Kavir
Kavir
Manishi
Manishi
Paribhu
Paribhu
Swayambhur
Swayambhur
Yata Tatyato
Yatha Tatyato
Artan
Artam
Vyedadat
Viddadat
Chasvatibhyam
Jasvatibhyam
Samabhyam.
Samabhyam
I'm going to try to read this. Saparyagach Chukram Akayamavrinam Avranam. Sorry. I take again. Saparyagach Chukram Akayamavranam. Saparyagach Chukram Akayam Vranam. Saparyagach Chukram Akayam Avranam.
Saparyajak Chukram Ayam Avranam
Asnaviram Shudam Apapavidham.
Nanaviram Sudham Papavidham
Asnaviram Shudam Apapavidham.
Ashnaviram Sudham Papavidham
Kavir Manishi Paribhu Swayambhur.
Kavir Manishi Paribhur Swayambhur
Kavir Manishi Paribhu Swayambhur.
Kavir Manishi Parambhur Swayambhur
Yatha Tatya Torta. Sorry, this one's going to be difficult. Yatha Tatya Tortam Vyedadat Chashvatibhya Samabhya.
Yathat Yatho Turban Vyadat Chaturvidbhaya Sambhaya.
This is old Vedic language, so there is normal Sanskrit, but this is one dimension ahead. So we read the word by word. Saha, that person. Paryagat,
Paryagat
must know in fact.
must know in fact.
Shukram,
Shukram
the omnipotent.
the omnipotent.
Akayam,
Kayam
unembodied.
unembodied.
Avranam,
Avranam
without reproach.
without reproach.
Asnaviram,
Snaviram
without veins.
without veins.
Shudam,
Shudham
antiseptic.
antiseptic.
Papavidham,
Papavidham
apapavidham.
Papavidham
Prophylactic.
prophylactic.
Kavi,
Kavi
omniscient.
omniscient.
Manisi,
Manisi
philosopher.
philosopher.
Paribhu,
Paribhu
the greatest of all.
the greatest of all.
Swayambhu,
Swayambhu
self-sufficient.
self-sufficient.
Yatha tatyatha,
Yatha Tatya
just in pursuance of.
just in pursuance of.
Arthan,
Arthan
desirables.
desirables.
Vyadadhat,
Vidyatat
awards.
awards.
Shashvatibhyam,
Shashvatyam
immemorial.
immemorial.
Samabhya,
Samabhyam
time.
time.
Translation. Such a person must factually know the greatest of all, the personality of Godhead, who is unembodied, omniscient, beyond reproach, without veins, pure and uncontaminated, the self-sufficient philosopher who has been fulfilling everyone's desire since time immemorial. So you can please repeat after me. Such a person
Such a person
must factually know
must factually know
the greatest of all,
the greatest of all,
the personality of Godhead,
the personality of Godhead,
who is unembodied,
who is unembodied,
omniscient, beyond reproach,
beyond reproach,
without veins,
without veins,
pure
pure
and uncontaminated,
and uncontaminated,
the self-sufficient philosopher
the self-sufficient philosopher
who has been fulfilling
who has been fulfilling
everyone's desire
everyone's desire
since time immemorial.
since time immemorial.
So this is a verse which is packed with information about the transcendental qualities of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So we go to the purport by His Divine Grace Srila Prabhupada. Here is a description of the transcendental and eternal form of the absolute personality of Godhead. The Supreme Lord is not formless. Just let them arrange the furniture. Can continue. So the Supreme Lord is not formless. He has his own transcendental form, which is not at all similar to the forms of the mundane world. Hare Krishna Rab. The forms of the living entities in this world are embodied in material nature, and they work like any material machine. The anatomy of a material body must have a mechanical construction with veins and so forth, but the transcendental body of the Supreme Lord has nothing like veins. It is clearly stated here that He is unembodied, which means that there is no difference between His body and His soul. Nor is He forced to accept a body according to the laws of nature, as we are. In materially conditioned life, the soul is different from the gross embodiment and subtle mind. For the Supreme Lord, however, there is never any such difference between Him and His body and mind. He is the complete whole, and His mind, body, and He Himself are all one and the same. So this is again another extremely beautiful mantra in the Isopanisad, which is describing the qualities of the Supreme Personality of Godhead in such a way that you will not find actually in many places. This is a very accurate and extensive description of the qualities of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So the first thing which Srila Prabhupada brings out here is that one thing which if we remember previous verses of the Isopanisad, they are kind of playing a kind of a riddle with the reader or with the listener. The Lord has no legs, but he walks faster than anybody. And now here it says He has a body, but He has no veins. Like we all have veins in our body. So this is the only kind of body we know, bodies with veins. So this is an invitation for us to analyze that actually the Supreme Lord has a form, but that form is transcendental. It's not made of material elements, and as such is also not depending on anything material. It's made of a completely different nature. Then another thing which Srila Prabhupada brings here in the purport is that we, the living entities, for us, living entities, there is a separation between soul and body. So the soul is within the body, but the soul is not the body. But for the Supreme Personality of Godhead, there is no such separation. So that's not inside the body of Krishna, there is a little soul inside. The Paramatma, with many paras. No. All the parts of the Supreme Personality of Godhead are all transcendental. The whole body is made of pure spiritual energy, of Satchit Ananda. So therefore, we use in Sanskrit this terminology, Satchidananda Vigraha. It's a form of eternity, knowledge, and bliss. Wait, it became black here. No, it's okay, back. So, maybe I should have that one. That doesn't die, eh? No. If you can take my phone. How do you scroll?
Just swipe, not left, right.
And so.
This way, yeah. This is back and this way.
Okay. So our bodies, actually, it's explained in Bhagavad Gita. They are the word with Krishna was in Bhagavad Gita is yantra rudhani mayaya. It's a machine made of material energy, and we know that because we know this body. But the body of the Supreme Lord is of a completely different nature. Another thing is that our mind, for us, living entities with a material body, the mind is an aggregate attached to the soul. Yeah? So there is me and there is my mind. I am separated from my mind. And actually one of the first goals when practicing yoga is to understand that the mind has its own life. If you see in the classical forms of meditation, which are not exactly devotional, but they are just meant to curb the mind and to understand the mind. In one stage, one is advised to look at the thoughts or the impressions which the mind gives as a movie, without reacting. We analyze what I'm thinking about now. I'm thinking that it's cloudy outside. I'm thinking, oh, I forgot to change my clock. We're thinking so many things. There's all these impressions in the mind. But actually these impressions, they are not connected to the soul, to the Atma, to our inner self. They are external. So this is one part of this classical, I would say a little bit impersonalistic meditation, but it has some goal, which is understand that me, the soul, and the mind are separated. So one observes the mind like one observes a movie, without reacting to it. But for the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the mind of the Lord and the thought and the senses of the Lord, they are of a transcendental nature. Like, for instance, one thing which the devotees in the beginning wonder, what is actually this offering of food to Krishna? You put the plate in the altar, and normally when you take it out, everything is there. Sometimes there is stories of devotees. There was a devotee in Bengal. He was a little child, and his father, who was a Brahmana and also a devotee of Lord Chaitanya, went on a trip. So the mother sent the offering with the boy to offer to the deity of Krishna, and the boy came back with the plate, and there was nothing there. Everything was eaten. And the mother said, this boy is really tricky. What is he doing? He's probably eating the food, the mother thought. So he goes the next day, he comes back with the plate, and the plate is again empty. So then the father comes home, and the mother tells him, I think there is something funny going on with this boy, He goes and offers the food to Krishna and he eats it himself. But then it showed up that the father was hiding in the temple, and you saw the boy came in, he put the plate, and he was sitting offering his prayers to Krishna. And then he took the plate and he brought it to the kitchen, empty. So this is exceptional cases when the Lord actually eats the food which is on the plate. But normally the Lord accepts our offering by looking at it. So when we try to understand the characteristics of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and these characteristics are in some way the same for us when we are in our spiritual form is that the functions of the senses are interchangeable. So you can look at something and you can taste it. You look at the food, and just by looking at the food you are able to taste it. Or I actually remember many years ago, maybe 50 years ago, I was interested in parapsychological phenomena. So there was a woman in Russia, and this woman, they made an experiment with her under scientific conditions. She could see the colors with her fingers. She could go with something. This is blue, this is red, this is yellow, without looking. So sometimes we see this phenomena when the senses are performing the function of other senses. So for the Supreme Personality of Godhead, all these senses, they are interchangeable. So Krishna can hear with his eyes, and can taste with his eyes, and any kind of combinations. Smell with his ears. So all the functions of the senses are interchangeable because, in this material world, the senses, how do they work? We call actually the senses the gates, The body sometimes is called in Sanskrit the city of 9 gates. There is the nose, mouth, ears, etc. We have all these gates, communication between the inside of the body and the outside of the body. So in this material world, we perceive things through different gates. But when we are in a spiritual form, and for the Supreme Lord, there is not this gate. How do you say? I can only see here. I cannot see what's going on here. So this conception of a gate and a border, a limit of our sense perception is not there. So this is complete openness of the spiritual body. And of course, for the Supreme Personality of Godhead, this is so in material conditioned life, the soul is different from the gross embodiment and the subtle mind. And for the Supreme Lord, however, there is never any such difference between him and his body and the mind. He is a complete whole, and his mind, body, and he himself all are one and the same. Also the same thing, which is important for us in relationship with the deity. Sometimes we hear people calling idols. This is not idols. When a deity is installed, either by a formal process of installation or by a process of worship, because Gaura Nitai can be installed by kirtan. So when the deity is installed, the deity is spiritual. So it's a transcendental form. It may seem that it's made of material energy, but it is not. It's made of pure spiritual energy. So in the Brahma Samhita 5.1, there is a similar description of the Supreme Lord. He is described there as Satchidananda Vigraha, which means that he is the eternal form, fully representing transcendental existence, knowledge, and bliss. As such, he does not require a separate body or mind, as we do in material existence. The Vedic literature clearly states that the Lord's transcendental body is completely different from ours. Thus is sometimes described as formless. So formless means no material form here. This means that he has no form like ours, and that he is devoid of form. This means that he has no form like ours, and that he is devoid of a form we can conceive of. So, for us, in the conditioned state, it's not really possible to conceive how the spiritual form will look like. this realization, this understanding of a spiritual form comes a little bit different for different devotees. It can come progressively, it can come all of a sudden, it can come now and then. There is all kinds of varieties of perceiving the spiritual nature. And this is granted by the mercy of the Supreme Lord and by our own purity. So in the Brahma Samhita, it is further stated that with each and every part of his body, he can do the work of the other senses. So this is another feature of the Supreme Lord. The Supreme Lord may think about something, and this is immediately manifested. Also for the servants of the Lord, when the servants of the Lord, pure servants of the Lord, when they desire something, and that desire is in accordance with desire of the Supreme Lord, then things just manifest. And of course, this is completely different from the material world, where you have to work very, very, very hard in order to accomplish any goal. But in the spiritual world, everything is run by desire. So the Supreme Lord, with his mind, he can accomplish anything, or by looking at something, he can immediately, like it is said in the process of creation, there is the gross material energy, which sometimes is called pradhana. So pradhana is like with what the scientists call primordial soup. I don't know if you heard about this. Primordial soup is how everything was before it was differentiated. So pradhana is like that. There is energy there, material. It's external energy of the Lord, but there is no activities, there is no forms, there is no elements. Then the Lord glances at this energy, and immediately there is forms. Also the time, what is time, also appears when the Lord glances at the creation. So this is very, very wonderful descriptions of the characteristics of the Supreme Lord. So this means that the Lord can walk with his hands, he can accept things with his legs, like you were saying, Mohini, see with his hands and feet, and eat with his eyes, etc. So completely interchangeable, the activities of the senses. Any of the senses can do all the activities of the other senses. In the Shruti mantras, it is also said that although the Lord has no hands and legs like ours, he has a different type of hands and legs by which he can accept all that we offer to him and ran faster than anyone. These points are confirmed in this 8th mantra through the use of the word like shukram, omnipotent. Omnipotent, this is it comes from the Latin omni, which means completely, totally. So the Lord's worshipable form, the Archa Vigraha, this is the deity form, which is installed in the temples by authorized acharyas who have realized the Lord in terms of mantra 7, is non-different from the original form of the Lord. So here we understand that this process of worshipping the deity is actually a very serious process, because we are worshipping the Lord's transcendental form. And one has to be very careful not to commit offenses, not to see the deity as material. One of the main rules also in the worship of the deities is cleanliness, extreme cleanliness. One should understand when one is in a clean state and not an unclean state. So this process of worshipping the deity is very important, very, how do you say? It's a little bit dangerous, I would say, because one is dealing with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And if one is not very careful, one is prone to commit offenses. We can see that like there is devotees in Vrindavana. This is described by the Goswamis, and they had deities at home, and they were worshipping these deities or taking care of these deities like if they were family members. So the children would carry the deity of Krishna, and then when it's time to eat, they would bring the deity of Krishna to the table and put the plate for Krishna, and then Krishna would have a bed, and they would bring him to the bed, change clothes, bathe, everything like moving the deity around the house. We don't do that. We follow other types of regulations because this is just for devotees who are in a spontaneous platform. That means devotees who already have realized their relationship with Krishna and who are free from material desires. For us, what is advised, it's a process which is called actually Pancharatrika Vidhi. It's called Pancharatric because it was spoken during 5 nights, Pancharatrika Vidhi knowledge. So this is the knowledge about the deity worship. How one should relate to the deity, how one should dress the deity, how to offer flowers to the deity, how to massage the deity. We have actually in ISKCON 2 very nice books written by Krishna Kshetra Swami, which is called what is it? I was just looking at it today. Pancharatrika Pradipika or something. It's two books with all the processes of deity worship. So I will read again. The Lord's worshipable form, the Archavigraha, which is installed in the temples by authorized acharyas who have realized the Lord in terms of Mantra 7, is non different from the original form of the Lord. So if you have a deity at home, you never know. If the deity is installed in the temple, okay, the deity is installed. But deities you worship personally, Krishna may also choose to be present in that deity. If you have a Gopal or Gauranitai or Jagannath at home, one has to be careful. You never know who is there.
What do you mean, who is there?
It may be just an image to help you to focus and to help you in your development of devotion, but Krishna may also be there. And then it becomes it's not a help anymore, then it becomes very serious. It's like dating and marrying. You're meeting somebody, you're learning to know that person, but then one day it becomes serious. So I have heard that, like for instance, Gauranitai can be installed by Kirtan. So you don't have a formal installation ceremony like one has, like instance for Radha Krishna deities, one has to have a formal installation ceremony in which the Acharya, the spiritual master or representative of him, will ask Krishna, please enter into these forms and bless us so we can worship you. Okay?
Yes.
Okay, the Lord's original form is that of Sri Krishna, and Sri Krishna expands himself into an unlimited number of forms, such as Baladeva, Rama, Nrsimha, and Varaha. All of these forms are one and the same personality of Godhead. Similarly, the Archa Vigraha, so that means the deity in the temple, worshipped in the temples, is also an expanded form of the Lord. By worshipping the Archa Vigraha, one can at once approach the Lord, who accepts the service of a devotee by his omnipotent energy. So the Archa Vigraha of the Lord descends at the request of the Acharyas, the holy teachers, and works exactly in the original way of the Lord by virtue of the Lord's omnipotence. Foolish people who have no knowledge of the Swish Isopanisad and any other Shruti mantras consider the Archa-vigraha, which is worshipped by pure devotees, to be made of material elements. This form may be seen as material by the imperfect eyes of foolish people or Kanishta Adhikaris. But such people do not know that the Lord, being omnipotent and omniscient, can transform matter into spirit and spirit into matter as he desires. So one interesting point is here that matter and spirit is for us. For Krishna, it's just his energy. Yeah? So, in this way, Krishna can be manifested in the form of the deity, it can be in the spiritual world, but actually there is no difference between these two forms. They are both fully spiritual. And this process of deity worship is very strong because it gives us the possibility to relate directly with the form of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Of course, this brings a lot of responsibility, but it's also an enormous blessing if one is able to have a deity which he can worship. Another interesting point here is that all the forms of the Lord, they are non-different. They are the Supreme Personality of God that Srila Prabhupada mentions here. Lord Baladev, Lord Ram, Lord Nrsingadev, Lord Varaha. So these forms are one and the same personality of Godhead. Sometimes people who have studied about Hinduism, they think that we worship many gods. I mean, there is Nrsingadev. Hare Krishna, thank you. There is Balaram, there is Lord Ramachandra, there is Parashurama, there is even Vyasadeva, who is a literal incarnation of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. There is Lord Krishna, there is Narayana, there is Vishnu, there is Surya Bhagavan. There is, unlimited forms of the Supreme Lord. There is one prayer in Sanskrit which is called Vishnu Sahasranam. So this is 1,000 names of Vishnu, and many of these names, they refer to different incarnations, different aspects of incarnations. There is Kurma, for instance. I actually have a deity of Kurma, which I worship. And so all these deities, they are the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And this is one way we should understand that the Lord, and I got lost here. Okay. The Lord is always thinking of ways how to help the living entities in the material world. Because, we are parts and parcels of the Supreme Lord. So when we are in trouble, when we are suffering, the Supreme Personality of Godhead is not insensitive to that. It's not that the Lord is unaffected and cold and cruel. Not at all. The Supreme Personality of Godhead continuously is worrying about us living entities in this material world. Of course, a little problem there is that we have free will. So even if the Lord is worrying, we maybe don't care, or we maybe do foolish things, or we maybe act in such a way which causes our own suffering. But from the Lord's part, is always thinking of different ways on how to free his parts and parcels from suffering. And one way in which he's doing is by manifesting himself in this form of the deity. So which gives the devotees a direct approach. We can see the Lord, we can offer flowers to the Lord, we can offer whatever we cook to the Lord. And in this way, we can advance in devotional service. Because for us, for the soul, for the Jivatma, our senses are actually spiritual. So my eye is forming an image of something I'm seeing. Yeah? It's forming an image in the brain. But who is actually seeing? You know, because the brain has no eyes. So who is actually seeing? This is a little bit of interface discussion, but these people who research on consciousness, they actually don't know who is seeing. But according to the Vedic philosophy, actually the soul is seeing. So the eyes are just a tool for the soul to see. So, the living entity, the spirit soul, has spiritual senses. You know, we have also a spiritual body, which at this point is very tiny. But by performing these activities like chanting the holy name, worshipping the deity, studying the scriptures, taking part in kirtan, by doing all kinds of devotional service, what happens? The soul grows. It's why we say Mahatma. He's a great soul. Yeah? I mean, it's evident from the language why we use this terminology. Mahatma. It's a great soul. Because when we, I mean, in the same way as we give food to nourish the body and water, in the same way when we perform devotional service, especially if it's devotional service done with pure motivation, what happens? The spiritual body grows. And actually, we should all become Mahatmas. This is why we are here, to become great souls, you know, fully spiritualized. That our spiritual body grows. Because what has happened now, I actually give this example very often when I give lectures in schools. Let's say you have a balloon of air, yeah? You know, like the children have in the parties, air balloon. And then you put pressure on it, and you keep adding pressure. Of course, the balloon may explode, but let's hope it doesn't explode. In the end, it will be almost nothing, yeah? It will be just, you know, if it's a good balloon, you can almost bring it to a point with so much pressure from outside. So in the same way, this is what happens with the soul. The soul is spiritual, but the pressure of the material energy, from where we get all the impressions, all these sensual exchanges with the material world, it just overwhelms the soul. And the soul shrinks to the size of a point.
To a size of...
A little point.
But it's always a tip of a hair.
No, only in the conditioned state. Otherwise, when you feed the body by doing devotional service, the spirit soul grows.
So how big can it be?
That I cannot say.
I thought it was always a tip of a hair.
No.
Okay.
It's in conditioned state, it's in the tip of the air. And everything is there like in the form of a seed. It's in several places in our Shastras. It's like a seed. So when you put a seed, like in Sanskrit, they like to give the example of a banyan seed. Because the banyan tree may be 200 meters. You know, because the banyan tree gets a trunk, and then it gets new branches, and then it continues. There is actually a place in Navadvip, marketplace. It's only one banyan tree, maybe 150 meters. And it's just one tree in shade. So the soul is in a seed form. And when you water the soul and the senses of the soul by the process of devotional service, which starts with chanting, then the soul grows. And it grows first by our senses becoming spiritually awakened. So like when you look at the deity, you don't see just a material form, but gradually you learn how to see Krishna. When you taste prasadam, this is not just food, which one throws in the mouth and goes into the stomach, but it's actually the mercy of Krishna. So in this way, one develops realization. It means one's spiritual body is growing. Mahatma. So the following condition of the image is... Okay, where did I finish? In Bhagavad Gita, okay, the Lord can transform matter into spirit and spirit into matter as He desires, because for the Lord it's just one energy. You know, it's so the Supreme Lord, He has this prerogative of saying it's all one, because for Him it's all one. It's His energy. Of course, we may discriminate that the spiritual energy has certain characteristics, the internal energy, and the external energy has others, and the marginal energy, but you know, there is no strict borders there. But for us, there are strict borders. So in the Bhagavad Gita 9, 11, and 12, the Lord regrets the fallen condition of man with little knowledge who deride Him because he descends like a man into this world. Such poorly informed persons do not know the omnipotency of the Lord. Thus the Lord does not manifest Himself in full to the mental speculators. It can be appreciated only in proportion to one's surrender unto Him. So the fallen condition of the living entities is due entirely to forgetfulness of their relationship with God. I mean, such a purport here. So thus the Lord does not manifest Himself in full to the mental speculators. What means mental speculators? Mental speculators means, it says here, the Lord has no veins. How does the blood go around there? You know, maybe it's some kind of osmosis or something. You know, they are trying to imagine something, but they are still conditioned by the material energy. Why? Because their intelligence is not purified. This is the function of the chanting of the Hare Krishna mantra. Our intelligence becomes purified. We understand why we are attached. We understand why we are suffering. We also understand why others are suffering. And we develop sympathy for others. So all these things happen when we engage in the spiritual process. So even in Krishna's time, so Krishna was appearing in front of people, and some people, they saw Krishna as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and others said, I mean, who is this? You know, he's born as a cowherd boy, now he's a king. I mean, is he a kshatriya? I mean, he's a vaishya. I mean, what is this Krishna? Many people saw Krishna like that. It's unbelievable for us, maybe, because, I mean, we try to understand Krishna, and we accept Krishna as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, but many people, in the time of Krishna, they just saw him as normal person, you know. He has his kingdom, and he has his wives, and his castles, and his friends, and his enemies, and this and that. But the devotees of Krishna, they saw him as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So in this mantra, as well many other Vedic mantras, it is clearly stated that the Lord has been supplying goods to the living entities from time immemorial. A living being desires something, and the Lord supplies the object of that desire in proportion to one's qualifications. If a man wants to be a high court judge, he must acquire not only the necessary qualifications, but also the consent of the authority who can award the title of high court judge. The qualifications in themselves are insufficient for one to occupy the post. It must be awarded by some superior authority. Similarly, the Lord awards enjoyment to living entities in proportion to their qualifications. But good qualifications in themselves are not sufficient to enable one to receive awards. The mercy of the Lord is also required. This is also another amazing paragraph. that Srila Prabhupada writes. So Srila Prabhupada is referring here to a very famous verse from the Upanishads, which starts, Nityo Nityanam Chetanas Chetananam Eko Bahunamyo Vidadati Kaman. I will explain every word. So Nityo Nityanam. So it says, amongst all the eternals, Nityo Nityanam. The Nityanam is the many eternals. Nityo, there is one. Chetanas Chetananam, a conscious living, a conscious being. Eko, one. Bahunam, to many. Yo, certainly. Vidadati Kaman, which fulfills all desires. So this is what differentiates, according to this verse of the Upanishad. There is many differences, but according to this verse from the Upanishads, what differentiates the Supreme Personality of Godhead from us is that we are totally and absolutely dependent on the Lord for the fulfillment of our desires. And what the Lord is doing, the Lord is at every moment, because the Lord is in the heart, in the form of super soul. So at every moment the Lord is in our heart and is seeing our desires. And according to our actions, He is fulfilling our desires. So this is a very famous word. Eko, He's one. Bahunam, many. Yo, Vidadhati Kaman. He's fulfilling all desires. Kama. Kama means desires. Means also lust, but in this case it means desires. So the Lord is fulfilling the desires of all living entities. So this is what Srila Prabhupada is trying, it's hinting and explaining in this part of the purport. And one very important thing here, that we speak very often about qualifications, and the living entity may be very qualified. But without the mercy of the Lord, it's not possible to fulfill one's desires. Either they are material or spiritual. So anyway we want to live our existence in the material world or in the spiritual world, we are depending on the mercy of the Lord. This is why we look at in the Vedic times there was this worship of the demigods. So the worship of the demigods, if it's done properly, as I think it was done in the Vedic times, it's actually cultivating the feeling that we are all depending on mercy. So without the mercy of Indra, there will be no rain. Without the mercy of the sun, there will be no sunshine. Without the mercy of the moon, there will be no vegetables growing, no vegetation. So this was a way for people who were pious to understand that we are depending on the mercy of the higher authorities. So therefore, we see in the older parts of the Vedas that the four original Vedas, they are full of prayers to the demigods. And the reason why is this, it's because by following the Vedic culture, people would at one point understand that we are depending on the mercy of the higher authority. And then gradually, when they have understood that, they start to question, who is the highest authority? Is it Indra? Is it Varuna? Is it Soma? Who is it? And then gradually they come to the Supreme Lord. I think I'm going here over time, but I wanted to give a short lecture today. Ordinarily, the living being does not know what to ask from the Lord, nor which post to seek. When the living entity comes to... Okay, I just have a funny story here. There is this story of Cassandra. You know Greek mythology? Who studied Greek mythology? I don't think you studied anymore. In my school, we had to study this. So this Cassandra, she is asking for eternal life. She goes, I don't know, to some demigod, Apollo or Zeus or something. Give me eternal life. And just said, okay, you get eternal life. But she forgot to ask for eternal youth. So she lived for thousands of years. The body was degrading. And in the end, they were just carrying her in a little pot. Because, I mean, it was just, she was nothing. She could talk, she could see, she could understand everything, but there was no body. So she forgot to ask for eternal youth. So this is interesting because Srila Prabhupada says here, ordinarily, the living being does not know what to ask from the Lord. And Cassandra is the best example. Nor which post to seek. When the living being comes to know his constitutional position, however, he asks to be accepted into the transcendental association of the Lord in order to render transcendental loving service unto him. So, the only safe prayer to the Lord, because somehow we are in a subordinate position and we always have to pray for the Lord and to pray to the Lord. So the only safe prayer is, let me become your servant. Let me not fall down. Let me remain in devotional service. Let me somehow continue to be in your association. Don't exclude me. Actually, this is interesting because Srila Prabhupada said once to the devotees, you know, devotees were saying, Prabhupada, you're so advanced. And so Prabhupada said, the only difference between me and you, I'm constantly praying not to fall down. It's a very, very deep statement. Unfortunate living beings under the influence of material nature ask for many other things. And they are described in Bhagavad Gita 241 as divided or splayed intelligence. This is also 241 is also a famous verse. Neha bikrama nashosti prachavayo navidyati. How is it? Neha bikrama, somebody help me. Neha bikrama nashosti prachavayo navidyati. And then Ekeha Kurunandana is the fourth line. I forget the third line. Okay, Neha bikrama nashosti. It means people who have many desires, they cannot get anywhere because their intelligence is split. You know, like you see people in the material world, I want a house, I want a car, I want a wife, I want children, I want money, you know, I want to be healthy, you know, I want to be famous. I mean, they want so many things. So in the end, they accomplish nothing. Nehabikramana shosti pratyavayo navidyati. So in spiritual life, we cannot be like that. Bahu shaka yanantascha. Okay, no, remember the third line. Bahu shaka. The intelligence of people who have many material desires is bahu shaka. Bahu is many. Shaka, many branches. But the devotee, ekeha kurunandana. Ekeha. One again, eka, eke, eka, and iha. Right here, one determination. And therefore, they become very strong. So, spiritual intelligence is one, but mundane intelligence is diverse. In Srimad Bhagavatam 7.5.30 and 31, it is stated that those who are captivated by the temporary beauties of the external energy forget the real aim of life, which is to go back to Godhead. Forgetting this, one tries to adjust things by various plans and programs, but this is like chewing what has already been chewed. So why is this chewing the chewed? Because we have seen what is the history of humanity. The history of humanity is trying to create facilities for a comfortable life, make a better house, better car, better food, better travel. You know, everything should be just better and more comfortable for the material body. But has this made people happier? Not much. I have lived now 70 years, which is quite some time, and seen a big change in the culture and technological advancement. And I would not say that people are much happier today. If one looks them on the street, they look always, I'm late. I'm late. I must get there. Oh, SMS. Oh, email. Oh. So many things to do. The life is the peaceful, simple life has disappeared, and they always full of anxiety, which is a very sad condition. So chewing the truth is trying to do something which already so many people have tried to do and they have failed. Actually, this chewing the truth has a funny origin, this expression, because in India, the cows love sugar cane. You know what is sugar cane? It looks like a bamboo. They look always like a bamboo. So there is, in the streets, you can buy this sugar cane juice. So there is one man, he takes this sugar cane, he grinds it, and juice goes in one glass. They have the same glass for everybody the whole day. Anyway, it was a joke. But so you take this sugar cane juice, and then he presses it like, 20 times, because not much money in this, just the man has to survive. So he presses it like 20 times, and then he throws away. And then a cow comes and said, wow, this is my lucky day. Here is some sugar cane. And the cow starts to chew this, but there is no sugar left. The man has already grinded it 20 times. So this expression, chewing the truth, comes from this fact that I think not only cows, but probably other animals, when they see this sugar cane and they want to eat it, but it's already finished. So this is the same thing. We're trying to do the same thing as that our parents did, become happy in the same way, but that's not going to work. Chewing the truth. I lost myself. In Srimad Bhagavatam, it is stated that those who are captivated by the temporary beauties of the external energy forget the real aim of life, which is to go back to Godhead. Forgetting this, one tries to adjust things by various plans and programs, but this is like chewing what has already been chewed. Nonetheless, the Lord is so kind that He allows the forgetful living entity to continue in this way without interference. So this is also another form how the Lord manifests His mercy. I mean, sometimes, I wonder myself, there is people who are so evil, and I just wonder, how can God allow them to continue? It can be gangsters or politicians or dictators or murderers. One wonders, how can this continue? But here it is said, the Lord does not interfere. And at one point, they get the full bill of everything which they did. They thought, this is an easy ride, Nobody's stopping me. But one day they will get stopped. So, does this mantra of Isopanisad use the very appropriate word Yatha tat yatha, indicating that the Lord rewards the living entities just in pursuance of their desires. If a living being wants to go to hell, the Lord allows him to do so without interference, and if he wants to go back home, back to God, the Lord helps him. That was it, huh? Oh no, more. No.
Couple of more.
My God, this verse. Okay. God is described here as Paribhu, the greatest of all. So sometimes another name which is used for the Lord in the Upanishads and in the Vedas is Vibhu. Vibhu means the greatest. So Paribhu is a similar word, the greatest of all. No one is greater than or equal to Him. Other living beings are described here as beggars who ask goods from the Lord. The Lord supplies the things the living entities desires. If the entities were equal to the Lord in potency, and if they were omnipotent and omniscient, there would be no question of their begging from the Lord, even for so-called liberation. So real liberation means going back to Godhead. Liberation, as conceived of by an impersonalist, is a myth, and begging for sense gratification as to continue eternally unless the beggar comes to his spiritual senses and realizes his constitutional position. So, unless the living entity wakes up and starts to become inquisitive about what is the goal of life, what I'm doing here, what is this crazy, mad race for sense gratification? So unless the living entity starts to do that, then there is no hope for them. They continue eternally in this looking for sense gratification. And they continue eternally to be beggars. Only the Supreme Lord is self-sufficient. When Lord Krishna appeared on earth 5,000 years ago, he displayed his full manifestation as the personality of Godhead through his various activities. In his childhood, he killed many powerful demons such as Agasura, Bakasura, Shakatasura, and there was no question of his having acquired such power through any extraneous endeavor. He lifted Govardhan Hill without ever practicing weightlifting. Prabhupada is actually humor. I mean, Krishna was a little boy, I don't know, 6, 7, maybe even before 6, because I don't know when he went to Mathura, to Gurukula, but he was a very small child and he was lifting Govardhan Hill. Prabhupada says, without practicing weightlifting. It's very, very humorous. He danced with the gopis without social restriction and without reproach. So some people, they try sometimes to understand the pastimes of Krishna as something sexual. This is completely total misunderstanding because, first of all, there was no material bodies. There is Krishna, is in his spiritual body. Krishna's servants in Vrindavan, they are all in their spiritual bodies. And even if you look at their appearance, their spiritual manifestation, they were 5 or 6 years old. So the exchange was on a completely different level. And the problem is that we are conditioned by our material vision, and therefore many people try to, to identify these pastimes with something similar to mundane sex. But this is completely misunderstanding. So he danced the gopis without social restriction, without reproach. Reproach means that nobody would find, you cannot in any possible way found any way to criticize that. Although the gopis approached him with the paramour feelings of love, the relationship between the gopis and Lord Krishna was worshipped even by Lord Chaitanya, was a strict sannyasi and a rigid follower of disciplinary regulations. So this shows, a sannyasi who has completely rejected sex life, why should he worship the relationship between Krishna and the gopis? If it was mundane, but it's transcendental. It has nothing to do with our material understanding. So therefore, Lord Chaitanya, as a strict sannyasi, he worshipped Lord Krishna and he worshipped the gopis. To confirm that the Lord is always pure and uncontaminated, Sri Isopanisad describes him as Shuddham, antiseptic. Srila Prabhupada translates antiseptic. So Shuddham actually means clean in normal Sanskrit, but this antiseptic is actually very good because not only is Krishna absolutely pure, but wherever he comes, everything becomes pure. It's like you spray some purifying thing all over. And apapa vidam, prophylactic. You know what means prophylactic? You know, you were a nurse. So antiseptic means you disinfect something, and prophylactic means when something is present, I mean, you do something before the disease appears or before the contamination of the problem appears. So apapa vidham. So I forget the exact construction of this word, apapa vidam, but it means that apapa means sinless. Wherever Krishna is, there is no possibility of any kind of sinfulness manifest. He's antiseptic in the sense that even an impure thing can come purified just by touching him. It's Prabhupada explains beautiful. The word prophylactic refers to the power of his association. As mentioned in Bhagavad Gita 9:30 and 9:31, a devotee may appear to be a sudurachara, not well behaved in the beginning, but he should be accepted as pure because he is on the right path. This is due to the prophylactic nature of the Lord's association. The Lord is also a papa vidham because sin cannot touch him. So papa in Sanskrit it means sin, and apapa means sinless. So sin cannot touch Krishna. Even if he acts in a way that appears to be sinful, such actions are all good, for there is no question of his being affected by sin. Because in all circumstances he is Shuddham, most purified. He is often compared to the sun. The sun extracts moisture from many untouchable places on earth, yet it remains pure. In fact, it purifies obnoxious things by virtue of its sterilizing power. If the sun, which is a material object, is so powerful, then we can hardly begin to imagine the purifying strength of the all-powerful Lord. So the Lord, so here is this verse from Bhagavad Gita, 9:30. Apichet sudracharo, something. Apichet sudracharo. Thank you. Apichet sudracharo bhajate mammananya bhak sadureva samantavyasam yagvavasto hisam. So this refers to devotees who are not behaving properly. Suduracharo. They are committing maybe horrible activities. It could be because of habit. It could be because of heavy conditioning. It can be because conditioning from the material modes of nature. So here it says that even such devotees, if they are in contact with Krishna, in due course they will become purified. But, I want to make a but here, because this verse is heavily misused. You know, every pedophile in ISKCON wants to use this verse, apichet sudracharo. But Krishna says, even if you commit abominable activities, no, you can, if you commit abominable activities, you can continue your Krishna consciousness, but nothing says that you have to do it within ISKCON.
Is that from Bhagavad Gita?
No, this is from my own brain.
But there is a verse.
Yeah, there is a
There
is a verse, but I was not thinking about that. I was just thinking, okay, you have committed something horrible, okay, just go to some place and chant Hare Krishna. Why do you have to be in the society of devotees? Just don't bother devotees and don't cause a bad name for ISKCON. Because actually Srila Prabhupada said, ISKCON is his body. It's a quite special statement. So don't cause problems to Srila Prabhupada's body. So when we use the name ISKCON or are doing something on behalf of ISKCON, we should always be careful. Like we should be careful on deity worship that, this is Prabhupada's body. It should be handled very carefully. So this Apichet Sudracharo, it's heavily misquoted, Everybody who does some nonsense comes with this Apichet Sudracharo. No, but this is, one will be forgiven, but this is up to Krishna. Because if you look at the Vedic society, criminals, and this is a society according to the principles of Krishna, criminals were heavily punished. Like a cow killer, he was immediately killed by the king. If there was absolute proof, he was immediately killed. There was no mercy. There was no Apichet Sudracharo. It's just the head rolls off. So there was regulations in society to deal with these people. The problem is not, nowadays we have become contaminated by liberal society, which says that, we should be very, very sorry for the criminals because they probably had a very bad mother and their father was always very angry and therefore they became criminals. But in the Vedic society, there was no such criteria. It was very clear that if somebody committed horrible activities, they would be punished. They had to take responsibility, and that was part of the purification for the activities which they did. They could start again, and they would become completely free from the karma if they were punished by the king. So anyway, I have overextended here myself. I have abused your patience, but it was a very long purport. If you have any questions or comments, but I would advise go home and read this because, this purport, it's wonderful. Every small quality of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, how we should approach, how Krishna acts, what is spiritual, what is material, about deity worship. Just go home and read this and study it because it's very beautiful. Isopanisad is a very small book, but it's very powerful. Any questions or comments? I guess everybody's tired, so we just end here. Or?
I am with the question always.
Okay, good. Go ahead.
Somehow you already answered. Before came my question and you continue a little bit. And it was like many devotees, they think where they do their rounds or follow the principles, they think now it is like they need to go back to the God. And this it is just the condition, what they need to create. And my question, it is like, this it is real, depend from Krishna, like you mentioned a little before, or we need to transcend ourselves to not see anymore the good and the bad, like you mentioned, the criminals and things, how Krishna led them. And so we be in the position we have not anymore like good and bad. We can understand all existence in some way.
One thing which is interesting, maybe not immediately related with our questions, but what comes to my mind is like this. A Shudra always thinks he's a Brahmana. So the first quality of a Brahmana is that he's humble. He doesn't think that he's superior to others. Okay? And I would say the first quality of a devotee is that he doesn't think he's a devotee. He thinks he's an aspiring devotee. I'm just trying to learn. I'm full of faults, and I'm just trying. If you think I'm a great devotee, it means you're just in illusion about yourself. So we are all aspiring devotees. This is the two things. And in order to relate with other people, we were speaking earlier in the Isopanisad about three types of devotees. There is the Kanishtadikari, Madhyamadikari, and Uttamadikari. So Uttamadikari is fully on the spiritual platform. So it is explained by Bhagavad Gita. He sees a dog eater, and the Brahmana at the same level. He looks at gold and looks at garbage. It's material. Yeah? So this is a topmost platform. The Kanishta Adhikari, he just sees himself and his guru. He doesn't see very much the other people. Madhyama Adhikari is where most devotees in ISKCON are. It's the middle platform. So he sees Krishna, he sees the spiritual master, he sees himself, he sees the innocent, and he sees the demons. And he acts according them. He acts according. How do you say? He acts to each of them accordingly. So to the innocent, he explains about Krishna. The demons he avoids. With devotees, he develops loving relationships of friendship. And Krishna he serves, and the Guru he serves. So most of us, either we are as Madhyama Adhikari, as we are on that platform of Madhyama Adhikaris or not, we should try to act as Madhyama Adhikaris. So sometimes in preaching, you have to take action. Yeah? You cannot be fully tolerant towards everybody. We would like to do that. But if people go out of their way to cause us trouble, they're going to get it back. So we don't like to do it, but what else to do? And Srila Prabhupada gave instructions, like one of the instructions, no lazies, no crazies in the temples. And I remember in the beginning of our movement, we have many people, in these two categories, and we thought, they are just trying to become devotees, let them be here and so on. But at one point, Prabhupada said, no lazies and no crazies. Somebody has to be a little bit sane in order to take up the process of devotional service and sincere, not to exploit the devotees. And sometimes, we see in our movement that people come and they try to become devotees, but they are too crazy to become devotees. And this is explained, it's because of offenses in previous life. They were probably in the surrounding of devotees previously, and they committed offenses, and now they come and they want to go to devotees, but they are crazy. I remember we had one devotee many, many years ago, maybe 40 years ago, and we told him, you have to chant 16 rounds. And he took the bit bag and said, 16, 16, 16, 16. You don't remember? No. It was in Krishna, 16, 16, 16. I said, no, you chant Hare Krishna 16 rounds. No, 16, 16, 16. So anyway, he was trying to be a devotee, but there was such a disturbance in his mind that it was not possible. So we should try to get sane people, if possible.
How much we can change in one life. Like we come with some qualities, like you mentioned, from the lives before, and still we chant and we do our best. And how much we come with all these qualities all the life, and we do all our best. And in the end, we see.
You can become a pure devotee. You can become a pure devotee in one life. That's absolutely possible.
16 rounds.
Yeah.
So Krishna guarantees that. And it's not that, to become a pure devotee, that happens all of a sudden. It may happen actually when you leave the body. Because as long as you have the body, you carry karma. If your karma is finished, you die. And you go to the spiritual world if the karma is finished. But as long as we carry a body, we carry some kind of conditioning. And that is there, but the main track is serving Krishna, remembering Krishna, chanting the holy name, associating with devotees. That is the main track. And then there is all these disturbances, It's like when you're driving with rain or snow. You have the wipers. And you don't see much, but you have to keep forward. So it's a little bit, there is these disturbances which come from the body and the mind, conditioned from society, from our upbringing, also from the external society. I noticed that society today is less innocent than it was for 40 years ago. You know, like in Sweden, nobody closed the door. You remember Mohini? Yeah, I lived in Stockholm, you don't lock the door.
I not close the door.
You live in the spiritual world, so. But most people close the doors.
In our country too, you never close the doors. Yeah,
So it was much more innocence before in society. So this also influences us as devotees when the society becomes overcharged with violence and bodily consciousness and sexuality and anger and so many different things. It influences us a little bit. If we can remain aloof, that's very good. But a little dose we take. Okay? Thank you. All glory to Srila Prabhupada. Shri Isopanisad ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Ora Premananda.